The story begins in a dark alley where a hero named Harang is being attacked by hooligans. One of them grabs his shirt and he was puzzled, not understanding what was going on. Because of this reaction, the attacker became even more angry. It pissed him off that this guy was constantly running away and he hit him, knocking his glasses off his face. This kingpin sneered at the teenager. The kid seemed to think he wouldn't get caught if he just always ran away. People who learn slowly are quick to grasp after a beating. With this method, the bully was going to teach him another lesson. The youth could not answer and simply covered himself from his blows. He was alone, much smaller and weaker than his opponents. One of the company approached them and stopped his friend. He said he went too far. Then he approached Harang and asked if everything was all right. There was no life left on his face. He avoided them for too long, and he paid the price. Being badly beaten, he was worried only because he was late for something. This man was very disappointed when he waved his hand, but Harang ran away from him. Grabbing him by the hair, he wanted to know why the youth always ran away. Silently, he took his wallet out of his pocket and handed it to the guys. After which the company left, leaving him. They took all the money and as they left they laughed at him. Harang lifted his glasses and sat down leaning against the wall. Gradually the hero came to his senses, his face was bruised. He looked at his watch and realized that he was very late. Gathering his things, he hurried. After some time, he reached the house. Without even changing his clothes and putting himself in order, he took off his backpack and went to the computer. Reaching out, he took the gadgets from the table. He put virtual reality goggles on his head. And took the controllers. The connection has started. And he gradually began to dive into the game. Until he became a completely different person. He was a high-level character wearing shining armor and wielding a huge sword. In the game, his teammates were already waiting for him. One of them looked at Harang with displeasure. He asked why he was late again. The guy became embarrassed and he apologized to him. The conversation was interrupted by a fair-haired girl. She just registered today and asked what to do. Harang told her not to worry and suggested to his friends that they try to finish in an hour. The team supported this idea and he accepted the quest. Having carefully studied the task, they set about its implementation. This game was called Quest Hero, the best virtual game to conquer the gaming market. It had a high level of freedom and different quest paths. This is a game that gets a great response from users. The girl warily asked where they were going. One of the teammates suggested to just believe in Harang and follow him. He led them along narrow paths full of traps, bypassing each of them. Harang was quite a famous player in this world. The newcomer was impressed. They made it all the way without encountering a single difficulty. But that was only the beginning. Now the fun begins. At first, he started playing out of interest. Having experienced many different difficulties and strategies along the way. And the number of people who recognized him increased. Having achieved great heights in this game world, he easily dealt with a huge number of different monsters. And he became who he is today. His team went into action. And together they quickly cleared this level. After the battle, the guys collected all the extracted valuables. They did a good job and finished in just 40 minutes. The new girl was happy, because thanks to Harang, she would not be late with her plans. Being a little embarrassed, he said that it was thanks to everyone who followed him. But the team members disagreed. They believed that they managed thanks to his help, calling him an excellent leader. Harang's face was full of joy. He thanked his friends with such kind words. On this, the guys decided to end the game, because each of them had their own life and responsibilities in the real world. One of the friends warned Harang not to be late tomorrow. And saying goodbye, he left the game. The young man spent each of his associates. And he was left completely alone, there was only emptiness around him. Sighing, he decided that was all for today. They had a good time. He should have gone too. Already taking off his glasses. He suddenly noticed something in front of him. A strange silhouette appeared in front. He took a closer look and was surprised, because he had never seen such a monster before. All this seemed suspicious. Abruptly, an unknown monster approached him. It all happened so fast that he didn't even have time to react. The creature was a few centimeters away from him. This strange, piercing look was not pleasant to him. But it didn't matter, you just need to defeat him and leave. He raised his sword over his head and stopped abruptly. For some unknown reason, his hands didn't move. The character did not listen to him. Somehow, the monster paralyzed his movements. But that was not all. Something strange began to happen to the body. His character began to fade. In a short moment, where he stood, there was nothing. He was transferred to another place. Being underwater, the hero is trying to get out. Having surfaced, he was able to inhale the air and come to his senses. Looking around, he was shocked by what he saw. The hero was in a completely unfamiliar place. He tried to remember if it was in the game. Looking at the statue carved into the rock behind the waterfall, Harang realized that he had never been to such a location. Maybe they just added it? Looking at his reflection in the water, he noticed something. The appearance has changed, all his things have disappeared somewhere. The hero does not see any sense in what is happening, it seemed to him that this was a dream. While trying to sort through the options, he suggested that it might be a hack. Most of all he was worried about his friends. Harang didn't know what he would say to them when he returned. He did not want, once again, to make excuses for being late. Despite his position, he could sense a presence behind him. A human-like creature in a long dark cloak. It holds a sword in its hand, which was not a very friendly gesture. Harang looked at him. Not realizing who it was, he mistook it for a monster. Left without his equipment, the hero could not do anything and decided to run away. But this monster approached him almost instantly. Harang managed to notice his maneuver. The creature swings its sword to strike. But he manages to dodge. A little more and he would have hit. But this man wasn't going to stop. He continued to strike. The hero could only dodge them. His position was quite desperate, he tried to leave the game. But he failed to do so. Harang was frightened and did not understand what was happening at all. Thoughts swirled in his head, he had never faced such a problem before. The stranger did not give him the opportunity to realize what was happening, rapidly continuing his attacks. But Harang still tried to get out of the game. In an instant, horror appeared on his face. He was too distracted, trying to leave the game, and did not notice how the attacker's sword was about to cut him in half. Literally one moment, he had to save himself. The guy managed to react, bouncing to the side and the sword hit the ground with incredible force. Thanks to a timely reaction, he survived. Being at a small distance from the attacker, he further tried to understand what was happening. Someone very quickly approached him from behind. As soon as Harang had time to turn around. As he immediately received a blow with a sword on the arm. He held his other hand to his shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. Harang realized that there was another monster, he was in pain. Well, a thought popped into his head. He can't be hurt, because it's a game. He didn't understand anything at all. Is everything that's happening real? The enemies began to approach him. There were more and more of them. The realization of this horrified him. There was no point in what was happening. How could this happen? He was sure he was playing a game. Again, he was attacked from behind. Harang turned around, feeling threatened. At the moment of impact, he manages to dodge. Who are they and why are they attacking him? One of the attackers gave orders not to let him escape. Hearing these words, the boy was surprised. The creatures that attacked him could talk. Are they not monsters? Realizing this, Harang tried to stop his attacker. Before he could say anything, he tripped over a stone. He lost his balance and fell on his back. The two ran up to him, preparing to end him, but at the last moment someone stopped them. Two swords stood in front of his head. They were approached by a tall warrior in a white mask, who ordered them not to act rashly. A young girl was standing next to him. Hearing their voices, the hero realized that he was still alive. This man ordered to pick it up. The rest of the warriors surrounded him as he got to his feet. The girl asked who he was, demanding to know his identity. Her face reminded Sharon of someone. He tried to introduce himself. But one of them took him by the shoulder, telling him to answer her quickly. However, the guy did not know how to explain it. He himself did not fully understand what had happened to him. While everyone was busy trying to figure out his identity, a head flew in their direction. She fell to the ground. And rolled right up to Harang's foot. He was scared. It was a terrible sight. It looks like the one who dropped that head was approaching them. A huge monster, resembling a human in its appearance, looked at them with a bloodthirsty gaze, like prey. The masked warriors thought it was an ambush. They were attacked by savages and prepared to fight. The three warriors decided to attack the huge monster first. The savage brandished his axe. And drops of blood flew into Harang's face. The hero stood at a loss. Did someone really die? With one blow, the savage dealt with three at once. The leader was left alone with this monster. After losing his warriors being full of rage, he jumped up, about to make a quick attack from above. But in the blink of an eye, he flew back. The hero looked at the wounded man who was lying on the ground, showing no signs of life. The young man realized that everyone who tried to attack the savage was already dead. The creature moved towards him. He was about to run away, but that young girl came to the defense of her comrades in arms. It approached the girl and is about to strike. Quickly swinging the axe, he strikes. The girl could not offer any resistance, and like the others, she flew off to the side. With difficulty, she managed to get to her knees. Despite the pain and heavy damage, she tried to rise, taking up her sword. The hero decided that if he left her, she would definitely die. The girl was kneeling before a huge giant. He was getting closer. Harang wanted to help, but what could he do? He did not want to die, and this was not even a person he knew. It's better to just run away. But in the moment of reflection, someone grabbed his leg. The leader of these people, he begged to save the girl. You must, he whispered with his last breath. Barely had time to say the last word, the man fell dead. The hero looked at the girl and began to get nervous. The giant continued to attack her, and she barely had time to repel his attacks. The guy looked down, he was tormented by doubts, he did not want to die. Without having time to take any action, something appeared in front of him. It was a task just like in an online game. He had to protect Princess Yuta. She needs help and defeat the monster. At this moment, the hero realizes that Yuta is the same NPC who gave him quests in the game. He turned to face her, the girl barely able to handle the powerful barrage of attacks. Another notice appeared in front of the hero: failure of the quest leads to death. The guy fell to his knees, he was seized by despair. He was completely confused and did not know what to do with him. There was nothing. If he enters the fight, he can simply die. But what happens if he doesn't? The princess fought with the monster with the last of her strength. She could no longer hold on, and after another blow she fell to the ground. She wheezed in pain. The girl could not die here, she had to survive. The giant came close to her and promised to take her life. The situation of the princess was simply desperate, she could no longer do anything at all. The giant swung his axe. And at the last second, the hero, grabbing the sword, repelled his blow. She was in shock, not expecting this to happen. The guy said that he would delay him, she had to hurry and run. It looks like the monster only got happier with it. The monster's arms tensed with incredible force. And he throws the hero aside. The savage was a real monster, so fast that it was almost impossible to react to his attacks. With another blow, he once again throws the hero aside. The impact was so strong that Harangue was thrown up. He fell on his back from a great height. I barely managed to raise my head. How the giant immediately attacked him. The guy managed to hide behind his sword. And he was thrown back a few meters again. With each such blow, it was harder and harder to get up. He looks back at the attacker. The monster was about to strike the next blow in a jump. Harangue tries to react. He strikes with incredible force. But this time, the young man manages to dodge. Another thought flashed through his mind. He looked at the savage after repulsing a powerful attack. A horizontal long-range attack followed. Then sigh. And the next strong attack. All these movements were very familiar to him. The attack scheme was the same as in one of the quests. The hero raised his sword. Now he could see through his attacks. The two got ready and stood opposite each other, the fight is about to continue. Harangue could have blocked him. How was he supposed to take him away? He turned and looked at the princess. She was in the same place, the hero did not understand why she did not run away. Taking advantage of the moment, the monster decided to attack. But Harangue managed to notice his movements. And he blocked the blow with his sword. The hero almost said goodbye to life. At that moment, he realized that he screwed up. The monster continued to press on him harder and harder. Pushing an opponent with incredible power. He knew he couldn't last much longer. Looking at him, the savage began to laugh. But after a moment, the smile somewhere disappeared from his face. The sword pierced the chest from the back. The giant began to choke on his own blood. While he was busy with Harangue, Princess Yuta stabbed him in the back with a sword. She glared at the enemy. While the kid was surprised. The monster fell to its knees. The hero threw his sword. He fell right in front of the head of the defeated enemy. Lying on the ground, the monster was still breathing. He suddenly clenched his fist. He looked at the hero. Harangue was frightened by surprise. In the blink of an eye, the monster punched him in the face. And the guy flew off a few meters, hitting a tree. The savage turned towards the princess. She, too, was frightened, not expecting this. After receiving the same blow, she was thrown to the side, and she fell to the ground. The princess passed out. But Harangue was still conscious. The giant began to walk towards the princess. The guy came to his senses a little and tried to assess what was happening. The monster stood near the princess, looking at her. He had to get up, something had to be done. Suddenly, someone rushed past him. With great speed, this man drew his sword. And quickly approached the side of the monster. Intoxicated with rage, he screamed. And delivered one strong and quick blow. The monster fell dead, this time it won't come back to life. Harangue just looked at it in surprise. He saw a defeated monster that flew off to the side from a powerful blow. The man looked at the princess. He tried to lift her. She couldn't die, and he tried to wake her up. Yuta opened her eyes. With concern, the man asked if she was okay. Something distracted the boy's attention. It was a quest completed notification. He managed to protect the royal, however, there were still assassins who targeted Yuta. He had to protect her by following her and waiting for the main quest. He can only return if he completes all the main quests. It all seemed so real, but he did not understand what this quest window was. He was sure that someone had died right in front of him and this was not a game. The girl called him. She asked his name. Hesitantly, he introduced himself. The princess said she owed him now. She is the one who always returns them and said to follow her to get the reward. The guy was a little perplexed, but he obeyed her. The man objected, because they didn't even know this boy, why would they take him with them? The princess only replied that if he had planned to harm, he would have done it a long time ago. He silently looked at the embarrassed boy. But first she wanted to do something. The fallen warriors needed to be buried properly. And the man said he would find a suitable place nearby. The girl knelt down, looking at her defeated friends. It began to get dark. The three of them stood in front of the graves of the fallen. Yuta stuck one of her friend's sword into the ground. After the battle, many chips remained on it. After her father was killed, everyone turned their backs on her, but these guys protected her to the end. Although they are not even of the same blood, said the princess, looking at her friend's broken mask. They are the royal guard, wonderful warriors who have earned their honor. It sounded cruel to the princess. Those who left her father live in luxury, but those who kept their honor are buried here. This guy just remained silent, in response to her words. They just stood in silence. The princess turned around saying it was time to go. The guy paused a little and looked after them. He just sighed silently. Far from the place of events, it seems, the same assassins that were mentioned in the task were sitting. One of them sat silently, waiting for something. His name was Gorian. Another said that he did not see the princess, and the savage, who had come out on reconnaissance, also disappeared. The third decided that the savage had betrayed them. But Gorian objected, saying that he did not betray them. It seemed strange to them that he trusted savages. But it was not about trust. Apparently, the princess had already escaped their trap. This creature with a bloodthirsty look really wanted to catch the princess. Why not follow her right now? But there was no need for that, because it was already known where she was going. The trio continued to walk without stopping. They soon reached their destination. The village was in front of them. The warrior called this place the lands of Manhwa. The boy saw this, looking at the beautiful landscape with interest. Someone was climbing the stairs to the tall building at the top. A man was sitting inside and writing a letter. Someone knocked on the door and he let him in. The guard entered the room, being alarmed by something. He reported to the governor that the princess had returned. The governor and the man next to him were surprised, asking if it was true. He got up from the table and ran. The trio stood at the gate, waiting for the guards to let them through. The old man quickly ran to the meeting. She looked at him. And he looked at her. Tears began to flow through his eyes. The old man hugged her, glad she was okay. He said that a lot of time had passed. The princess only warmly called him Old Man Manhwa. He fell to his knees and began to cry. A crowd of people gathered around them. After a while, they all sat down at the table to eat. Manhwa apologized for the modestly prepared food as the village was small. But the princess said that everything was fine. It had been a long time since she had eaten something that looked like food. It's been 10 years, the old man almost recognized her. The girl noticed that since that moment he had gone bald significantly. Laughing, he said that he couldn't help getting older. The girl seemed to have overdone it a little. But everything was in order. The old man was just happy to see her safe and sound. He suggested that it was thanks to the 2 wars that brought the princess in safety. Her friend introduced himself as the commander of the royal guard. Looking at Harangue, the old man asked who he was. Well, the guy, as usual, mumbled something. The princess explained that he saved her on the way here and she wanted to reward him by asking Manhwa to do it for her. The old man promised to fulfill her request. He got up from the table and walked over to the boy. The old man began to say something, but abruptly interrupted the phrase without finishing it. The young man was a little wary. Manhwa called him an unusual youth. The boy agreed with him, but still did not understand why he was looking at him like that. The old man walked away, saying that he must have been tired after such a journey. Sitting back at the table, he asked the guy to rest properly. The girl thanked the old man for his hospitality. He ordered the head of the Yule family to see the princess and special guests off. Night fell. Harangue lay on the bed staring up at the ceiling. He could never forget everything that had happened to him. And he remembered the monster and the soldiers who died from his hand. He still couldn't exit the game. Apparently if he wants to return, he needs to complete all the quests. And to do this, you need to follow Yuta. He did not know what to do after receiving the award. Slowly he closed his eyes and began to fall asleep. But suddenly another notification came. He was supposed to save the princess from an unexpected attack by the assassins. Jumping out of bed, he realized that this was a new quest. But what else is a surprise attack? Is there another assassin? He quietly left the room, looking around. Looking to his left, he noticed something. Near the heap of firewood lay a knife and an axe. He took them in his hands, choosing his weapon. The guy stood silently thinking what to do next. Far down the corridor stood two guards guarding the door to the room. Despite the late hour, Governor Manhwa was seated at his desk in his office. Was he obviously puzzled by something, or maybe he was waiting for someone? The candles on the table suddenly went out. And one of the assassins climbed into the room through the window. He told the old man that he made his job easier here, so Yuta must have trusted him a lot. Looking at him, old man Manhwa said that they only work with Jod. This mercenary decided to ask something. On his way here, he saw the corpse of one of his subordinates. Even though he was a savage, he was still his subordinate, and whoever killed him he wanted to meet him. The old man remarked that if he was looking for the commander of the royal guard, then let him not worry, because he alienated him from the princess. The killer said that it was not worth doing so much and went to the exit. But the old man stopped him. He grabbed the princess, as promised, in exchange for the release of his grandson. The mercenary did not want to do this, and Manhwa was shocked by what he heard. The master assassin asked me to tell the old man when he met that henceforth the life of his grandson depended on his devotion. And laughing at him, he left. The governor just silently followed him with his eyes. This news upset him greatly. Meanwhile, the princess had a dream. Someone was calling her, asking how long she was going to sleep. Before her stood the image of her father, who asked if she had forgotten what day it was. Yuta was surprised by what she saw. She threw herself into her father's arms. The girl knew that he was alive. I have always been sure of it. Her father asked her what she was talking about. Did she have a nightmare? She remembered his promises to always be there. Father just sighed. He patted her on the shoulder. Therefore, he returned, but his image changed dramatically. He was a bloodied man, terribly frightening in appearance. Seeing this picture, Yuta woke up in fear. And she saw the killer's dagger in front of her. Harangue arrived just at the very last moment and pushed him aside. Assassin crashed into the wall and fell on the table. The guy stood alert, ready to take the fight. But the girl just looked at him in surprise. The killer quickly stood up, chuckling slyly. With an evil smile, he turned around, looking in their direction, saying that he was in pain. Harangue was ready for battle. Raising his weapon, the assassin praised the boy for his bravery, but he didn't seem to be very intelligent. Could he do anything in the dark? He understood what was about to happen. And at the moment of the attack he was able to dodge. Harangue was not as slow as the striker thought. He barely had time to finish his sentence when he noticed a fist flying into his face. The guy hit him with such force that he instantly fell. The guy breathed a sigh of relief. The girl didn't know what it was. He asked if everything was okay. Suddenly, they heard a loud bang, breaking a wooden wall. Another assassin entered the room. He was very glad to meet the princess. The princess wanted to know who he was. The assassin instantly appeared behind her, saying that she was good at escaping. But she still had to meet him. Harangue tried to attack him. Seeing the guy, the mercenary just sighed. He raised his hand and continued to attack. The hero noticed his movements. But then he got kicked in the stomach. Such a blow knocked him off his feet. Orion, smiling, only said that he annoyed him. The guy realized that the attacker distracted him with his hand and attacked with a kick. The princess grabbed the sword and attacked him from behind. And he said he'll play harangue when he's done. In one quick movement, he knocked the princess to the floor. The mercenary confessed to having killed countless people, but not the royal family. Then he put the blade to her face. Seeing this, the young man stood up. And just about to make a breakthrough. He immediately got kicked in the face. The mercenary was too fast, so none of them had time to react. The guy flew off to another part of the room again, hitting the wall. By his behavior, he irritated this killer more and more. He showed his trembling hand to him, saying that he was thrilled at the thought of killing the princess. The boy just looked at him angrily. The mercenary ordered not to interfere. Then he went back to the princess. Of course, his words didn't stop Harangue. He threw his dagger at him, but he repulsed him. The blow was so strong that steam came from his weapon. The guy quickly ran past him. Gorion watched his maneuvers with interest. He ran towards the princess. Seeing this, the girl was perplexed. Harangue grabbed her around the waist and jumped out the window with her. The mercenary saw them fall into the water. This situation made him laugh. Despite the late night, a light was still on in one of the rooms on the upper floors of the fortress. It seems that the governor was told a not very good news. His people said that the boy escaped the surprise attacks of the assassins and was able to escape. Manhwa tried very hard to give the mercenary this opportunity, but he wasted it. This fact puzzled him greatly. There were still many in these lands who remained loyal to the fallen king, so in order not to be caught, he let Gorion take care of it. But if he loses the princess, his grandson's life will be in danger. He didn't know what to do. Trying to think of options. He had only one way out. He turned to the head of the Yule family, determined to give the order. They will be looking for the princess, it is necessary to notify every soldier about this. But what happened to the guy and the princess? Air bubbles appeared from under the water. Harangue popped up. He seemed to be glad he survived. He looked around, trying to find the girl. When suddenly I noticed something. Yuta floated on her back, showing no signs of life. The boy quickly swam towards her. He picked her up and tried to look at her. It seems to have passed, the girl just lost consciousness. They needed somewhere to rest a little, and in front, by the way, turned out to be a small house. He dragged the princess to him, going inside. There was a small stack of hay in the room, and he put the girl on it. The guy did not know what to do, he decided to wait until the princess wakes up. He sat down on the floor and decided to rest a little. Something seemed strange to him. The quest was still not completed, but why? After all, he saved the princess. Meanwhile, the guards tried Sunday. One of the attackers flew out of the room at high speed. Leaning against the door, the commander left the room, wiping the blood off his face. The 3 remaining guards raised their swords when they saw him. He decided that Manhwa had already joined Jade. One of those guards tried to attack him. Sun grabbed his hand and just tossed it aside. Then stabbed with a sword. There was no time left, he had to get to Yuta and said that he would give the opponents the right to a dignified death. They became alert, understanding who they were dealing with. Behind him, he heard a voice saying that he was wondering who the commander of the royal guard was. The mercenary took a step forward. Jumping off the balcony, he landed right in front of the man. He was surprised to see Korean in front of him. And he said that he should be in prison. Assassin replied that he was soon promoted. In the end, after the death of the princess, the commander will be useless. Sun did not listen to all this nonsense and struck first. The mercenary realized that he was still loyal to the fallen king, but isn't it time to end this? But the warrior only told him to shut his mouth. They both prepared to fight. Some time has passed. Yuta woke up. She immediately jumped up. Harang sat next to him. He looked at her. The princess asked where she was. The guy replied that they had fled from the assassin. And she remembered how they fell into the river. The girl just sighed. The hero began to worry, it seemed to him that he had done something superfluous. It was brave, the princess said. And the guy was surprised. I survived again thanks to you, thanking Yuta said. He clearly didn't expect this. The girl went to the door. Someone from the fortress must have been looking for them right now, they had to go back. The young man agreed with her. They went outside, looking around. He decided to ask something. If she's royalty, then why are these people after her? The girl stopped. A weak person will be devoured by someone stronger, which is why she was persecuted, the princess answered. She lost everything she loved. Harang just silently listened to her. And only now did she understand. She needs power to protect what she holds dear. The boy continued to listen in silence. That was the end of her story, they had to go back. But he noticed something. The guy looked up, towards the fortress. Something was wrong. Looking more closely, he saw a familiar man there, tied to a post. And then he understood. The princess turned around to look at the young man. She walked over to him and looked in the same direction. She was terrified. It was the wounded son. But why is he there? She thought it was the work of Uncle Manhwa. The princess refused to believe it, she was sure that her uncle would not do it. One guard spotted them. He shouted to the others that the princess was right there. The soldiers wanted to catch the princess alive no matter what. But they didn't need a guy. Harang realized that something was wrong. The princess could not believe her uncle's betrayal. The guy grabbed her hand, saying that we need to get out of here as quickly as possible. But she was still confused. Assassin stood at the top of the fortress, looking at what was happening. Looking at the sun, he said that the night air was so refreshing. The warrior, being conscious of him, asked simply to kill him. But the mercenary does not intend to end him so easily. Footsteps were heard behind. Uncle was no longer hiding and decided to go up to the mercenary. On his face, Gorian just asked if he had finished playing devotion. Old Manhwa told him to shut up, because he knew nothing about devotion. The guards came up to him and he asked what was the matter. The soldier reported that the patrol troops found the princess but lost her again. The old man was furious at what he heard. They have already blocked the area and are doing a thorough search, they will be able to find them soon. The governor ordered the remaining forces in reserve to be mobilized and ensured that she was captured. Sighing heavily, he called his people miserable. And then Sun decided to talk to him. "Aren't you ashamed that you betrayed the deceased king?" But he replied that he would pay for his crimes, he should worry about his life. The commander just smiled when he heard that. At the top of his voice, he began to call out the name of the princess, saying that he was the one who had already died. Manhwa was beside himself with anger. He kept yelling that if she really cared about him, then let her run away. She must survive, only then can she fulfill the dying wish of the fallen king. The governor promised to cut out his tongue. But the mercenary stopped him. "Tell them to just wait, because the bait calls their prey." And the old man just shut up. The mercenary stood and waited. Manhwa's soldiers searched all over the village. They searched every house, trying to find the fugitives. One of the guards looked around the next room. Then he said that there was nothing suspicious here. The boys were lucky he didn't notice them. The guards were sure they couldn't run that far, they had to search carefully. Harang breathed a sigh of relief, fortunately they couldn't find them. He looked at the princess. She was sure that she heard the voice of her friend, deciding that he was still alive. The girl jumped down. And the guy asked what she was doing, because the troops were still outside. Since they passed by this area, the guys should be safe now. She apologized to Harang, saying she would give the bounty later if she could at all. The guy was confused. Since it had nothing to do with him, he should stay here a little longer and quietly escape. After these words, the princess ran through the alleys, towards the fortress. Another notice appeared in front of the young man: if he fails the quest, he will die. One of the guards was walking down the street. As the friend looked to the left, something caught his attention. Yuta popped out of nowhere, hitting him on the head with a rock. The guard collapsed to the ground. The girl sighed a little. She leaned towards the defeated enemy. And she took her sword. She turned around. Looking at Sun, mentally asked him to wait a little more. She did not notice how someone approached her from the right. Barely able to turn around. What a blow! And another guard fell in front of her feet, behind him stood Harang. He asked how could she go without a plan. It was hard for him to find her. The princess did not expect to see him. Meanwhile, guards guarded the Sun near the execution site. There were only 2 of them. Harang made his way upstairs in the form of one of the soldiers. The guard seemed more relaxed than he thought. He quietly crept up behind them. And knocked them both out with one blow. Everything turned out to be much easier, it only remained to save a friend. Sun woke up, hearing a rustle near him. The guy took him off the post, and he wondered why he was there. He wanted to know where the princess was and if she was all right. The guy replied that she was safe. He carefully helped him up. Sun thanked him. Suddenly, from the side they heard the voice of a mercenary. He was sitting on the roof saying that before that the boy helped the princess escape, and now he is helping his bait escape. He felt regretful. Worry about some guy. The doors of the fortress opened and soldiers came out. It was an ambush. They quickly surrounded the guy and his wounded comrade. Assassin came down to them from the roof. And he warned that the guy had better be prepared for the consequences. Sun just quietly said that he was sorry, it was all because of him. But Harang simply remained silent. The governor and his subordinates were still sitting in the fortress waiting for news. He remembered his grandson. As someone knocked on the door. One of the soldiers came in saying that they had found the princess. The old man was very surprised to hear this news. They caught her in front of the execution site. The governor and his people immediately ran there. By then, Harang was already sitting on the floor tied up. The mercenary was a little upset that he was caught so easily. He demanded to know where the princess was now. Sun interrupted him saying that the kid had nothing to do with this and he alone should be responsible. But the mercenary did not listen to him. He leaned towards the guy. He just sat and looked at one point, not reacting in any way to what was happening. Gorian that he hadn't given up yet, because you can't tell by looking at his face. He was just looking forward to the moment when the guy's face would twist in pain. The governor interrupted them. He said that he heard how they caught the princess and wanted to know where she was. The mercenary was only surprised, asking who told him that. And then he understood. The guard behind the old man drew his sword. And with one kick under the knee knocked him down. It was the princess. She put the blade to the old man's head and told no one to move. The guards were shocked by what was happening. But it looks like the mercenary was only happy about what happened. The old man was surprised to realize that it was Yuta. She warned that if one of them moved, his head would fly off his shoulders. The commander was as surprised as the others. It looks like Harang's plan worked. The girl could not even think that her uncle would betray her. Mawan just mumbled, trying to justify himself. She ordered the release of her friends. Assassin watched this with interest. She took the old man hostage to get out of here. He knocked Sun to the ground with a blade against him. He wondered what the princess would think of killing them. She said a little excitedly that she had nothing to lose, but he would lose both of them. The killer decided to cut them a little. The situation has become very tense. Sun only yelled at the girl that she should look wider. But she just continued to stare in silence, holding the blade at the old man's head. And he only remembered those times when he played with the princess with his grandson. Then he ordered them to be released. The mercenary was surprised by this order. But he just kept saying that everyone should be released. The guards obeyed the order, while the assassin only stood silently and watched. They immediately released the guys. The guy tried to take the son away. He asked with interest if this was part of his plan. The hero did not have time to explain. They need to leave as quickly as possible. Looks like the killer wasn't going to let them get away. He started laughing, calling everyone around idiots. Harang realized that something was about to happen. The assassin snatched the sword from one of the guards, having said that there are no victories without victims, and quickly threw the sword towards the princess. The young man tried to stop him, but he wouldn't be able to reach her. The princess did not have time to react to the blade flying at her, when suddenly someone grabbed her. Throwing the girl aside, the old man took the blow. The guy only managed to pick up the princess. Together they fell to the floor. He rose to his knees, asking if everything is okay with the girl. He wanted to know if she could move. Yuta replied that she could. The assassin looked at them, beside himself with rage. Again this rascal interfered with him. The guards ran to their master, but he showed no signs of life. They tried to stop the bleeding. The soldiers lifted him up a little, trying to close the wound. But the bleeding didn't stop. Enraged, one of the soldiers turned around, looking at the mercenary. And the soldiers shouted that their lord had fallen, ordering them to be killed immediately. Immediately all the soldiers ran to the killer. The mercenary just stood there looking at them. After that, he killed 2 soldiers at once with one blow. The commander of the guard ordered to continue to attack him and cut off his head. Assassin continued to destroy them one by one. Harang and the others tried to escape, while all the soldiers were busy with the killer. He noticed it. 2 soldiers came close to him. And at the same second, someone with a huge fist demolished them. The rest of the assassins came up to him. Looking at these monsters, the guards were terrified. One of them said that the situation had become not very pleasant. The head of the guard decided that they should defend their territory. One of the assassins realized that there were too many of them, and no matter how strong their leader was, he still couldn't cope. The guards were too much, no matter how strong Gorion was, he still couldn't cope early. He said to buy him some time. He will kill those two and return. The princess and the others continued to run. They stopped in front of the stairs to catch their breath. Sun told them that there was a small pier in the northern part of the village. But the princess had sent him there first, while they were on guard here. Suddenly, he noticed something. The assassin tried to attack the princess, and at the last moment he was able to grab him by the blade, telling her to run. The mercenary quickly dealt with him. The princess was taken aback by what she saw. Sun fell at the feet of Harang. He just stared at it in dismay. The girl immediately tried to attack him. But he took her down with just one blow. She flies to the side. And then it rises. With a cry, continuing to attack. The mercenary knees her in the stomach. And the princess falls to her knees. For someone who was on the run all the time, she was too reckless to run towards him like that out of anger. It seems that Sun was a valuable tool for her. The princess tried to get up. The hero still stood and watched. His body began to tremble. The girl said that he was not a tool for her. He was the one whom she completely trusted, her friend. As if someone like you, working as a servant under another, could understand that. Calling it rubbish, the princess screamed, tears streaming from her eyes. The mercenary, like a madman, began to laugh. This is the expression he was looking for. Harang also tried to attack him. But the mercenary grabbed him, saying that he was waiting for intervention. And with great force he threw it to the ground. The guy immediately got up. He grabbed the sword, looked at his opponent, and hit him. Assassin said he would treat him in a special way. Harang was alerted by these words. He used an incredibly powerful attack called Absolute Slash. In an instant, the young man was simply demolished. The blow was so strong that smoke was coming from the weapon. The mercenary continued to stand and look at the place where the guy had just stood. The princess was incredibly frightened, thinking he was a monster. When suddenly he noticed something. The smoke cleared, the guy continued to stand on his feet, his arm was injured. He realized that it was a skill. Assassin was about to attack, noting that the guy's sword is not as strong as his life force. The hero looked at his sword. Only half of it remained. The mercenary continued to attack him, but he dodged a little away. The assassin's attack reminded him of the assassin knight's status skill. Even though he has high attack power, it takes him a while to get into a stance before he can parry an attack. This skill leaves its user wide open. He will do it. The mercenary praised the boy for enduring one of his techniques. At the moment of the next blow, the boy jumped to the side and ended up behind his opponent. And while he was not ready, he tried to strike. But the mercenary notices the maneuver. Apply one more of my techniques, a horizontal cut. The guy was able to repel the attack. But his sword began to crumble. The killer quickly approached him. Harang did not have time to see his maneuvers. And with one blow the guy was thrown aside, he fell off the cliff. The princess couldn't do anything. The young man flew down. The mercenary was convinced that the boy was no longer a hindrance. He apologized for the long wait to the princess. She rose to her feet, sword in hand. Now that there was no one else to interfere, Gorion could enjoy the battle to its fullest. They were left alone. At the bottom of the cliff, Harang managed to stick his sword into the ground. He managed to hover and did not crash. The mercenary looked at the expression on the face of the princess. Such a face should be in a person who is about to die. Maybe she should start begging him to extend her life? Who knows, maybe he will show mercy. The princess rushed at him, telling him to shut up. The enemy repelled her every attack. Strike back. The princess was filled with even more rage. Smiling, the mercenary said that she looked like someone who was ready to fight to the death. He didn't want to end it too soon. He decided to tell her just one interesting fact. Asking if she knew that the king was killed by someone close. The blow knocked the princess back. She was sure that Jod killed her father. But the assassin claimed that she knew the man well. He didn't have time to finish his sentence. As received a hit from harangue. The princess looked at him in surprise. From such a powerful blow, the mercenary flew into the wall. For him it was unexpected. He thought the kid had crashed. Although it didn't matter. After all, this time he will definitely make sure that the guy will die. The mercenary began to rotate his weapon very quickly. He was preparing a special gift for the boy. This skill was called Annihilating Blow. The guy noticed that the energy flow has changed. And the assassin struck. The young man was able to block it. But then he felt pain in his shoulder. He did not understand what had happened because he was sure that he had blocked the attack. The assassin turned around and rushed towards him again. He did not wait and launched a counterattack. Their blades touched. And the guy's arm twisted in the other direction. At that moment, he realized something. He was able to read his skill. Gorian used the power of rotation when he touched his sword. This is a blow of the highest power. Harangue stood all wounded, he had a strong shortness of breath. Now he remembered. This is very similar to the assassin knight's skill when he went berserk. Then he had the only problem, this is the force of rotation. If he manages to contain this power, he has a chance to win. Just like in the game. No matter how strong a skill is, it always has a weakness. At the last moment, Harangue dodges the blow. But the opponent's blade strikes his leg. The guy falls to the ground. Assassin promised that the kid will pay for getting in his way. With the last of his strength, the guy rises to his feet. He wipes the blood from his face. Realizing that I was wrong. The technique was too strong for him to contain. His body can't take it anymore. He didn't know what to do. If nothing is done with this skill, then he will indeed die here. But he did not want to die and had to find a way to overcome him. He must handle the spear. At the moment, the guy came up with something. He looked at his sword. He only had one try. Rotating his weapon, the assassin kept saying that he would start breaking his legs. Harangue threw his sword at him. The mercenary fights him off. Is this his last effort? Left without a weapon, he rushed to him. This angered the assassin. How dare he use dirty tricks? The guy dodges another blow. After that, the mercenary was at a loss. There was no way he could hit him. Realizing that the guy deliberately threw the sword to make a gap. This fellow was really interesting to him. He was about to knee him, but the boy dodged again. Really again? The young man grabbed the sword, which he had previously thrown at the enemy. And with a quick blow, he cut the assassin's weapon in two. Shock was visible on his face. Along with his weapon, he also lost an arm. The princess just looked at it silently. The mercenary fell to the ground. The guy looked at him. It looks like it's turned off. He threw his sword to the ground. And just stood in front of a defeated enemy. Lifting his head up, he sighed. Saying he barely survived. After that, he took hold of his wounded hand, stopping the bleeding. The princess was amazed. Did he defeat this monster? Yes, who the hell? This person? The boy sighed as he turned to leave. As he heard the voice of the assassin behind him. It's not the end if both are still breathing. And he attacked the guy from behind, hitting him in the stomach. Harang did not understand at all what had happened. He woke up in a different place, his body was bandaged. Is it a dream? He looked around. And he saw that he was in a cave, not understanding at all what kind of place it was. Birds were singing outside. In front was a fire and a small pile of firewood. What happened? He was sure he had defeated the assassin. And immediately lost consciousness. He got a notification. The first test has been completed. The owner of the physical body, congratulations on completing the first test. As a reward you will receive a fragment of the returned stone and a skill. The returned stone is imprinted in his soul, but when he collects all the fragments, the stone will materialize and return him to his world. After reading this, the guy examined the fragment in his palm. Not understanding what it is. Is it really possible to return to the real world if you collect 7 fragments? He unlocked a skill called slashing. He had to wait for the quest at the next destination. This was the skill that Harang got in the first hall of the game. He considered. The longer he was here, the weirder it got. This place is completely different from the game, but the game elements are exactly the same. If this place has the same content as the game, then he can predict what will happen next. Sun entered the cave. He was glad to see the boy woke up, asking how he was feeling. The guy was surprised that he was alive. Did you really hope that I was dead? He answered. The guy awkwardly justified himself by saying that it was not so. Sun just smiled. He laughed. This guy is very interesting. Harang was only surprised. The commander said he was in poor condition, but quickly recovered. But what about him? The kid was fine, wondering how long he'd been unconscious. Today was the 6th day. A friend offered him food, but the guy refused. He wanted to know what happened. What about a mercenary? And Sun sat down beside him. He took a short pause, saying that when he woke up, the guy had already defeated the mercenary. He couldn't believe it. Just a nameless warrior was able to defeat Gorian. But soon after, he collapsed unconscious. And while the soldiers were killing each other, he took the opportunity to get the Yuta guy out of there. That's how they got out of there alive. But the situation was not painted in any way by the fact that the princess was betrayed by the only person she had ever trusted. The young man just sat silently. Sun put a hand on his shoulder, saying that said too much. He called him along and said that Yuta would be happy to know that he was awake. He stood up asking if Harang could get up by himself. The guy replied that he could. The princess stood on a hill, looking out over the village. Something was clearly troubling her. She remembered the mercenary's words. What exactly did he want to say? Does that mean Jod didn't kill his father? Friends came up to her. She turned and looked at them, noticing that Harang was standing and trembling a little. She smiled at him, asking how he was feeling. A little embarrassed, the guy replied that it was excellent. It was a relief for the girl. She thought that something might have happened to him since he had been unconscious for 5 days. And she asked again, "Is everything all right?" The guy was fine. While he slept, Yuta was on guard all the time, Sun said. And in a friendly way, slapping him on the shoulder said that he should be proud. The princess looked at her friends with a smile. She had a question for a guy. She wanted to know why he risked his life to save her. The guy was surprised by this question. But she wanted to know the answer. The guy didn't know what to say. Noticing this, she decided that she was putting too much pressure on him. It's not scary if it was difficult for him to answer now. She only offered to cook something until it got dark. But Harang decided to tell her. He knew what it was like to desperately want someone's help. That feeling when you want someone to come and save you. He knew him too well. For this very reason, he saved her. The princess took his hand. He didn't notice her approach. Yuta called him a very strong man, thanking him in retaliation. The boy was pleasantly surprised. He just smiled back at her. The princess, along with her commander, went to the place of rest. Sun caught the rabbit for dinner. The young man lingered a little, seeing them off with his eyes. And there was a notification in front. This was the second test. He must pass through the gate with the princess. The quest reward was one of the stone fragments. But what are the gates? After a while, Harang sat alone in the middle of the forest. He remembered that task. This quest was different from the previous one. What was the gate through which he had to pass? The princess called out to him. Ask what he is doing here. The guy said he sat down to catch his breath. The girl brought him a sword. He accepted it gratefully. Yuta was about to leave, but he stopped her. He wanted to know where the gate was. She said they were in different places on the borders of the kingdom, but why did he ask? The guy couldn't answer clearly. The princess asked me to tell her, promising to help in any way she could, because she knew nothing about him at all. He did not know what to say to her, because it would sound strange. She cheered him up a little, saying that everything is fine, he can safely speak. The guy was a little excited. He told her that he had lost his memory. Yuta was a little surprised. The guy thought he could restore it if he visited a few places. She felt sorry for Harang. He just looked away in embarrassment. Their conversation was interrupted by Sun. They had to leave quickly. Jod sent a new hunter. This greatly surprised the princess. In addition, he sent them a Montenegrin detachment. Sun had friends in the east, so he suggested heading there. The guy asked with surprise, "What kind of detachment is this?" And he explained that this was an elite unit of warriors selected by Jod personally. Not only are they strong, but they also have different abilities, so takeoff is difficult to handle. Right now it's better to avoid the meeting. Harang tensed up a bit when he heard this. The princess was very sorry. It seems that in this place their paths will diverge. These words confused the boy. She was pursued. If he goes with them, his life will be in danger. Despite this, he still wanted to go with them. Sun said not to force yourself. But he wanted to go, at least until he regained his memories. These words left Sun bewildered. The princess wanted to know if this would really suit the guy. He agreed. He still did not know where to go. Hearing those words, Yuta smiled. She was glad that he would go take it off. Soon they were on their way again. Walking along one of the forest paths. They were attracted by a sound nearby. The guy noticed something. The princess approached him, asking what was the matter. And I also saw something. Bandits attacked the wagon. Were the borders of the kingdom really that dangerous? One of the bandits approached the wagon guard. Sun watched closely. This thug raised an axe. And with one blow laid the man on the ground. Then he switched to a girl. She stood alone and was very frightened. This assailant simply grinned at her. Another bandit asked how she dared to resist King Wangwu. The girl covered the wagon. The villagers were counting on that food, and she wasn't going to let them steal it. The robber approached her, brandishing an axe. The little girl closed her eyes, ready to accept her fate. And at the last moment, someone's fist flew right into the face of the attacker. Sun arrived in time and was able to protect her. She looked at what was happening in surprise. The thug asked who he was. But he digressed, looking away. Harang attacked him, but he managed to repel the blow. Do you even know who I am? The bandit spoke proudly. But the guy didn't care.